Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today, I wanted to talk about the Day 11 Heist League spoiler information. It's been a pretty quiet day today. We've got a divination card, we've got a new chest enchantment, and we've got an extremely niche unique item. So let's go through the divination card first, because it's the one that I think is just going to be the most fun. Unchained is a divination card for a Facebreaker, which is 2 implicit Crangled. So, one of the things I like about this item is that Facebreaker is a build-defining item, and I'll bring up the stats of it if you're not familiar with it. It is one of the things that enables you, one of 3 items that enable you to play an unarmed character in Path of Exile. You have Facebreaker, you have Doriani's Fist, and you have the unique Cluster Jewel, One with Nothing. Each of these enable you to play a character that deals melee damage while not using a weapon. Facebreaker is probably the most popular of them to use, and it's just a kind of cool idea. It has a very large range of rolls, 600 to 800%, and because this item is going to be Crangled, that cannot be modified. You can't use a Divine Orb on it, so if you get 2 really good implicits and you get a 603% roll, unfortunately your Facebreakers are not going to be particularly good. But the pool of corruptions available on gloves is excellent. And if we go and have a quick look at those, you'll see there's 20 different implicits. They vary in item level from 1 up to 60, and there's good ones at every level bracket. So just going through the ones that are particularly noteworthy, I'm not going to discuss them all. Despair on hit and Ally Weakness on hit are actively bad. These actually make the item worse than they would be without it. The reason for that is that if you're playing a Facebreaker build, you are desperate to inflict vulnerability on hit, and if you are also inflicting despair on hit with a corrupt implicit on your gloves, you then need to increase your curse limit by 1 somehow. With this, you're gaining basically no benefit from doing so, and as a result, this just imposes a significant opportunity cost on the gloves. In fact, I think I would go as far as to say that I would rather a set of 750% Facebreakers without this mod than to have a set of 799% Facebreakers with Despair on hit. Next up we have Enfeeble and Temp Chains on hit. These don't add damage, but they are genuinely good. And these, because these are such strong defensive curses, they are actually worth increasing your curse limit for. There's a few ways you can do that, such as anointing Whispers of Doom on your amulet, or using various unique items that add +1 curse. And as a result, these are worth having. These are actually really good corrupts. Vulnerability on hit is amazing, absolutely amazing. You want vulnerability, you want it on enemies somehow, and this is a really easy way to get it. There are some particular players that run Facebreaker builds will not want this, but they'll be able to trade. If they've got one that's got vulnerability on hit, they'll be able to sell it for a fortune, and then pick up one that has the exact 2 corruptions that they want. Then we have attacks have base critical strike chance. This is really good on Facebreaker because it's very hard to get base crit on Facebreaker because you're not using a weapon. So this is not going to be good for every single build, but it is good overall. Even though the numbers are only 0.5 to 0.8%, that's enough. Next up, we have +1 maximum frenzy charges is as good as it sounds. And then there's all the plus level of socketed gems. These mostly have uses. So getting traps and mines is a bit mediocre. Getting projectile gems is a bit mediocre. But for most of the rest of them, you can shuffle around which of your gems are in your gloves in order to benefit from them. So for instance, if I had +1 to the level of all gems, I'd be inclined to put Herald of Purity into my gloves, assuming that I'm using it on my Facebreaker build, and yes, you should be. On the other side, if I had something like +2 to the level of duration gems, then I might put whatever guard skill I'm using, whether that be Molten Shell, whether it be Steel Skin, whether it be something else entirely, that would go in my gloves. Lots of options there. Anyway, that is Facebreaker. It is a fun item. If you've never played around with it, definitely give it a shot some point, but Unchained will give you a 2 implicit corrupted one. I do think this will be valuable in trade leagues. When I say valuable, it's not going to be multiple exalts or anything a card, but a set of them should be an Exalt most of the time. So think of, if you loot this, expect it to be about a quarter Exalt most of the time. The reason it will be at that price is because the perfect combinations, when it hits really hard, when it gets like 780 plus and gets 2 amazing implicits on it, that's going to be a set of gloves that are 50 Exalts or more to the right build. Next up we have Malakai's Artifice and the Replica Malakai's Artifice. So this has socketed gems have Secrets of Suffering. Cannot ignite, chill, freeze, or shock, but their critical strikes inflict Scorch, Brittle, and Sapped. This is a very difficult item to use well. The only niche that I can see for it is to socket Discharge into this on a build that has massive charge generation and that benefits just from having a quantity of ailments on a creature. And I'm thinking here a tri-elemental hit build. You might then run up to an enemy, particularly tanky enemy, detonate your Discharge from within the ring. If you've got power charges and endurance charges and frenzy charges at the time, and you critically strike, which being an assassin you've got a reasonable chance of doing, you then are likely to inflict Scorch, Brittle, and Sapped on those enemies. And then that means you've got 3 more ailments on them for the purposes of things like elemental hit. I think this is an extremely narrow niche, and it's the only use I've been able to think of for this item, but it's still kind of cool. I think this will really shine a lot more when Path of Exile 2 hits, and you can socket a 6 linked gem into Replica Malakai's Artifice. At that point, I think there'll be a lot more use of playing around with it. Lastly, we have a very deceptively powerful body armor enchant. This was interesting. This wasn't posted to Reddit for some reason. Apparently it only came out on Facebook and on the GGG website, but it has one of the most subtle and powerful enchants I think I've seen yet. Resistance modifiers have 50% reduced effect. It's obviously a nasty drawback, but it's not as bad as it sounds because this is going to be a piece of endgame loot, and on endgame characters, you've got to get your resist somewhere still, but you can generally make do with having none of them on your chest armor. Defense modifiers have 12% increased effect. So defense modifiers include pretty much everything that involves energy shield, that involves evasion, and that involves armor. Here we're seeing what it looks like on evasion and energy shield armor. Where I think this will really shine is if you had this on an item level 86 Vaal Regalia. Essentially, what defense modifiers have 12% increased effect means it's a little bit better, at least on high rolls, than having a line that says defense rolls roll as though they are 1 tier higher. So if you roll tier 1 energy shield on an item, it will be like you've got something. It will be considerably better than tier 1. If you've rolled tier 3 energy shield, it'll be about equivalent to a tier 2 energy shield normal roll. If you roll tier 2 energy shield, it'll be like rolling tier 1. Essentially, this is going to be incredible on Vaal Regalias. And I think that there will be some truly incredible pieces of armor that are crafted this league, starting with a base like this. The other thing that's notable about these enchanted body armors is that when they drop, they will drop with mods that are biased towards, or at least it appears, they drop with mods that are biased towards synergy with the enchant that they've got, and they also will drop with higher than average tiers of rolls. Anyway, that's all I got for today. If you've got any comments or questions, fire away below. Otherwise, have a good one, and hopefully we've got one more quiet day tomorrow, and then the news explosion should start the day after that.